Dana, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I asked you yesterday. I think holding the 114.5 release. The answer was no.
We were talking about, I was talking with Jordan that there is a new API that might be useful for subfiling that maps what rank is on what node. So of the subfiling.
Hmm.
But I don't think it's not going to make it into this one, but we might think about maybe under Rapids getting that into the
Like
actual,
116.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
Other than that, there's no, I don't think there's any holdups. I'm testing. I'm gonna see. I was curious to see if subfiling works on Macs.
Yeah, yeah. There's a few other things I want to add into testing too. Like we don't have any auto tools testing on the Mac. We um we should be doing Intel parallel and CI, still stuff like that.
Will Intel dropped their support for Mac?
No, I just mean Intel parallel in general.
Oh,
Yeah. I just turned on subfiling and the GCC action.
on Linux.
Yeah, yeah, I see one too fast.
Oh, I was just gonna say that yeah, I don't have any material that I present that I have readily available to present. So hopefully, if people have questions, feel free to ask. Hey, Alexander, I did have a question for you. In Python, is Python row or column major ordering for like arrays? It's neither, right? Is that how I understand it? It's, oh, maybe Alexander stepped away.
The Python itself doesn't support multi-dimensional arrays. That's
Hmm.
all done through the NumPy package. So I mean, you could have other numerical packages, but I think that's the one everybody's using.
Oh, okay.
And I think by default, it's the same as C. So what does that make it?
Row. So,
Pro.
Yeah, I always hate using row and column because those, because some vendors, is it like, I think it's like left index major. So the leftmost index is the slowest one.
yeah, I think so.
Right. And then the rightmost index is the one moving the fastest.
Hmm.
And I have this vague recollection that maybe you can create arrays where they can work the other way, but I've never done that.
Okay.
Sorry, I saw that someone wanted me to unmute. What was the question?
Oh, it's been answered. It's all right. I was just,
Asking about arrays in Python,
Arrays in Python.
multi-dimensional arrays.
Okay.
Which are generally handled through NumPy, correct?
Sorry, can you
Which
repeat?
are generally handled through NumPy.
Yes, yes. If you're serious about that stuff, you use NumPy, nothing else.
Because otherwise, if you try to do it using native Python stuff, you get ragged
No, no,
arrays, right?
no, 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 no. I mean,
Like,
NumPy is what turned Python into a science and engineering language powerhouse. So it was basically before, just another, scripting, doodling language.
Yeah, kind of related to that. One of the things I've noticed recently is that neither it seems that neither Golang nor Rust support multi-dimensional arrays natively, and I'm not sure how good the support is with any kind of add-on. Um, I was kind of interested in those languages with respect to HDF 5, but it seems like if they really can't support multi-dimensional arrays, that may not be a very good match.
really,
Uh,
Rust doesn't have
I don't
multi-dimensional
I don't
arrays?
know. I don't know anything about Golang, but for Rust, there is a package that tries to mimic NumPy.
Uh-huh. And do you
Uh,
do you know if it's terribly successful or?
I think that it's terribly recent.
Okay.
So that might be, one of the things, but they definitely have because the HDF5 crate in Rust, basically, I think it's called ND array
Okay. Yeah.
in Rust.
If you use the HDF5 crate?
I actually had my talk last week was showcasing a Rust um,
Oh, okay.
package that uses HDF5 crate.
Ah, okay. I think I couldn't make it last week because I often have a meeting which conflicts with this one. I guess there was a recording of that made?
Yeah, I'll put it in the, I'll put the link in the chat.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Yeah, every so often I try to see if we can get away from our C-based codes, and Rust might be a good candidate for that.
Is there a reason why you want to get away from C-based code?
Oh, mostly it's just to get away from the whole specter of buffer overruns
Oh,
and things like that. I mean, it doesn't make sense that, you should have to, we have computers that should be able to do this kind of bookkeeping for us.
yeah, it's called Fortran.
Well, yes, and the problem with Fortran has been that we also wanted some. I mean, this isn't necessarily for our heavy numerical stuff, but we have a lot of, I guess, just kind of data processing kind of efforts within, in particular, our we deal with satellite data processing, and so the satellite data comes down in a format called what is it called? CCSDS. It's a kind of essentially a binary format, and we have to convert it into HDF5 for the head of our processing chains, and that was written in C. And this might be those codes need to be rewritten anyway, or dramatically revised, and it might be a good time to move to something that's a little more reliable.
Hmm. Yeah, the thing I like about Fortran is it handles all that memory management for you. It's kind of hidden, which is kind of
Yes, no, I agree. That's the fact that you don't really have to worry about memory leaks.
Mhm.
But I think Rust may also do that, and I think Golang does as well. But the issue comes up as to whether or not they actually have native support for or any support. It doesn't have to be native for I don't know what you call it, true multidimensional arrays with strides and offsets instead of just list of lists.
Mhm.
Um,
You're saying those other languages.
Golang and Rust, I think at least out of the box only really support list of lists or arrays of arrays, if you want to call it that, as a to get kind of multidimensional support. And that doesn't really map well if you're reading in an array through the HDF5 library where your array can come in as a sort of a contiguous block.
I think one thing going forward, really for Rust, is this cargo tool that really manages dependencies and a bunch of other things, and building and testing and debugging. It's really powerful. I think that it kind of feels like it's from a recent era,
Uh-huh.
like it's really done for people who want to start from now and move forward rather than, dealing with decisions from 1977 and then onwards. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I have I noticed something about that. And one of the concerns I had was that in addition to HDF5, a lot of our processing depends on being able to read YAML files, because a lot of our control files are done that way. In fact, all of them are done that way. And there was a YAML interface I noticed uh, for Rust, and then there was some concern because one of the packages it depended on kind of went out of support, and I guess that, which is to say, you know, the volunteer maintainer stopped maintaining it, and it then kind of became unavailable, and everything that depended on that became unavailable. I really don't know the details, but it seemed like there was kind of a knock-on effect when one package ceased having an official maintainer.
And isn't it a problem with Rust that it's still actively developing so that code starts to not work after a while? I mean, C code is gonna like work forever, but
I don't know that. That's I never heard that, but I'm not following that closely. I just looked.
yeah, I don't either.
Yeah, I just look at this. Last week I had to deal with it a little. This cargo tool is just like amazing. You know, you just bring dependencies, builds for you. You know, you don't have to really makes it really modern feel. That's how I would say. You can be template. You can generate a templated template files for your project. All these kind of things. You know, I think goes a longer way to standardize from the get-go how things are done and best practices rather than wait 10, 15 years to percolate something. I think a lot of people will use it. I mean, I see a lot of impact in Python because there's a bunch of things now written in Rust. They're super fast and really easy imported from Python, and Python starts to benefit from that as well. So I think Rust will maybe not overtake, you know, who knows, but I think it'll just keep going.
Yeah, and there was some what was it, one of the various, was it the National Institutes of Standards or the National Security Agency kind of issued I don't know if it's a requirement or recommendation to write software in languages that don't have these problems with buffer overruns, because that's frequently I mean, in addition to just being inconvenient when your code crashes, it's frequently the source of security problems.
Right. Yeah, I remember that. That was recent.
I think it was within the last year. And they had a whole list of recommended. I don't remember if Rust was on there, but you know, anything where you know it handles the you know, the buffer overruns, you know, for you, or at least prevents them.
Scott, do you know what the status of Fortran is going forward? I know like they're all working on that like read on Flang. I think that was a labs project, but
You mean new features? I mean,
well, there was a lot of soul searching. It was like a year ago where they're trying to figure out what to do with Fortran because they had all this code written in Fortran. It was hard to find developers and
no,
language wasn't as well maintained. And
I know Greg can talk to this, but I'm pretty sure last time I was at Sandia, they were pushing to move all the Fortran codes to C++. And I think their main now language is C++. That might have changed, but at least at Sandia, that's what I thought. They were all going to C++.
Yeah, we're not doing much with Fortran anymore, at least in our group. I think there are a couple that are still using some Fortran.
Yeah, I think a couple of years ago I came across some opinions that said that the Fortran developers or standards committee had kind of, I don't know, erred in the sense that they put a lot of time and effort into developing various features for parallel processing, and they hadn't put any effort into supporting hash tables or list data types, which are, you know, pretty common now in sort of almost every modern language, and they're, you know, a lot of programmers really depend on them for doing the kind of nuts and bolts bookkeeping that you have to do. And I think that's at least, and that's kind of been my experience, that it kind of makes it hard to sort of to get things up and running quickly in Fortran.
Yeah, if you're doing linked lists and stuff like that, it's not trivial. It's not as
Right.
easy doing that in Fortran as like C++.
Yeah, and so the and then maybe also some of these parallel features have they were perhaps incorporated into the language before they were really mature.
Mhm.
Maybe that, you know, there's some thought that maybe it should have been more of an experimental effort instead of defining it in. But you know, they have limited amount of time and resources, and that's where they put them.
Yeah, I haven't looked too much at the new standards to 2024, I think. So it just came out, or maybe 2023. But they did address, I think, that you can do a character array that's can be assigned a dimension, a length dynamically, which is nice.
So okay, so it's like a string data type instead of having
Hmm.
every string be its own data type depending on its length.
Yeah. It's nice for passing to C because they used to have it. You have to have if you're passing a string to C, then it has to be one length of one, right? But it can be an array where I think they removed that restriction now. That you can actually pass a string or a character of more than length one.
But how soon is that going to actually show up in the
It's
compilers that are out there?
it's in it's I think it's been an extension to compilers for quite some time. It just hasn't been part of the standard because I've used it before and it doesn't complain.
Because like, aren't we worried when we're talking about using Fortran 08 features?
Yes.
I mean, that's like a 15-year-old standard.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think Fortran gets the attention it used to in compiler world. Is there any other questions or concerns? Well, this might be a short meeting then. Um, I don't have anything, so
Yeah, at the next one, I'll talk about the release that's coming up, the 1.14.5 release. That's going to be largely a bug fix release with some tweaks for cloud optimization of 5 and such. Talk a little bit more about what our thinking is on a 1.16 release between then and in the spring.
Okay, all right, thanks, Dana. Thanks, Scott. I'm kind of glad we just had a little discussion time. That was nice. All right, see everyone next week. Thank you.
Well.
Bye.
bye.